consumption, create stiff competition for renewable energy sources. This makes it difficult for the external players to generate sufficient returns on their capital for investments, often leading to capital flight. While introducing policy as a dummy variable in model analysis can provide comprehensive insights into the dynamics, there are complexities of the policy structures which present challenges for its analysis. Our speaker today is Mr. Peter Onyilo, who is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Axiomata Technologies Limited. Mr. Peter Onyilo is also a volunteer and advocate for sustainable development and an expert in mathematics and modeling at the United Nations Energy Program. Welcome, Mr. Peters.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for bringing me on board. Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. So I would like the moderator to help share my slides. So I will take you through a dry run on renewable energy subsidy regime and then policy gaps in Nigeria energy pricing. So please, could you please help share my screen? I think I've given a deck to Lavender.
Yes, I'm sharing your screen in a moment.
Okay. When that is on, I will proceed. Okay, please, you can move to the next slide. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide. So I want to thematize the topics into 5 key aspects that I'll be talking on. The first aspect will be energy and subsidy regime. And in the early 70s, due to...
Hello, Nancy. Can you hear me? Hello, Nancy. Please share the screen so that it will be easier for taking screenshots. Okay, thanks. Peter, continue.
Hello, Mr. Peters. Is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, Mr. Peters, you can take over, please.
Okay, so I'll be talking about the energy and subsidy regime regarding what has transpired in Nigeria from early 70s to this present administration, where in the early 70s, due to adverse impact of global energy prices, subsidy was introduced to cushion domestic effect of the global energy pricing. And as such, it was meant to be something that would be metered for a very brief duration of time, where it will be evaluated. It in fact will be evaluated, and then it will be subject to some policy analysis. But unfortunately, that was not done due to political instability in the country as at that time. And then subsidy lingered till early 90s, where there were different kind of energy crises across the globe. And it became evident that most of the subsidy policies should be revisited and then should be examined to see how it's going to affect stability in the country. But it was obvious then that policy risk was one of the greatest risks that affected a subsidy and energy regime at that period. And it's still very tenable in today's environment where the economic situation are precedented by policy risk and is affecting foreign direct investment as we speak. Now, when we move to aspect of renewable energy and politics, the impact of subsidy now on renewable energy was lack of free market access for renewable energy. When we talk about free market access, the energy market was supposed to be partially regulated, while all the players adhere to strict rules in playing in the market or in their relationship with other market entrants. But subsidy kind of atrophied the competition in such a way that energy pricing became very unstable because the cushioning of prices by the government created a situation where there could be parallel markets when there is artificial scarcity, either introduced by the market player or the conglomeration of monopolies, also known as cartel. This cartel also kind of dictated how the market responded to seasonal volatility. For example, when there was a scarcity about 30 years ago, the monopoly on the market was such that few were allowed to import finished products and distribute, and they still got subsidy on it, while others were not allowed to. So that was one of the flaws in those policies that were made towards subsidy implementation in Nigeria. And then we have to look at how it affected renewable energy market. For example, the renewable energy market was such that it required huge investments. And without having a free market for energy pricing, having alternative investments cannot be profitable for new entrants. And as such, it slowed down foreign direct investment for alternative energy, and then subsequently causing the investment and energy demand for renewable energy, especially solar, to shrink by a significant percentage. Then we see that there was no evidence, any evidence that we can point to that showed that the prevailing government supported renewable and alternative energy aside oil and gas. Because if you shuffle through all the policy documents between early 2000 to 2013, there were no legislative procedures that covers processes and method of reducing risk exposure to oil and gas. And as such, it was very difficult to even estimate how renewable energy will be of impact in Nigeria till 2013. So then we talk about policy gaps and energy antecedents. Number one, please can you move to the next 2 slides? I have some key points there that I would like to. Hello? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Peters.
Okay, please see, I will need you to help me shift to next, okay. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to run us through this data briefly. There has been a consistent constraint on energy market because of the demand and population growth. Sudden population growth has made it imminent that energy consumption is increasing exponentially, and the demand for such follows suit. And in no time soon will that demand subside. So the policy gaps that were highlighted in the energy sector was one, inefficient pricing. The pricing of energy infrastructure and projects was not so efficient. Then you will have seen in one or two publications by IMF and World Bank about how subsidy regime in Nigeria will have been revisited. And then the pricing was an issue because a group of investors and international funds were not able to compete favorably if subsidy lingers and if there was no way of altering the subsidy dynamics in Nigeria. So the funds that were supposed to invest in energy projects was held or channeled to continental Europe and other countries. Then we see the data from 2012 to 2022, that's 10 years gap, about how the lingering subsidy regime stalled renewable energy growth in Nigeria. So you see year-on-year growth almost not getting anywhere beyond 1.5% to 0%. And in most cases, there was no growth at all. And then the annual change in renewable energy uptake was flat for 5 years consistently, and it's obvious that the numbers are not going to change very soon yet until some of the processes are ready to be altered. Please, can I get the next slide, please? Okay. Okay, it's not, can you fit it to the screen? Okay.
Yeah. It is fitted in the
Okay,
screen.
okay, thank you very much. And we see that the major risk we have is policy risk. And other entities, other countries have experienced such, but they navigated safely away from policy risk in the long run as regarding the policies of the energy administrations. Then when we understudy policy risk in Nigeria, it is about 45 to 55%. And most energy investments are throttled down because of policy risk. And then I could cite some credible publications like Global Finance and other magazines that shows the impact of policy risk in Nigeria foreign direct investment flow. So you could clearly see that policy risk is the highest, and then inefficient pricing follows suit. And number 3 is data collection and aggregation on energy projects. Is one of the flaws we see in energy policy, energy pricing policy gap, data aggregation and collection. Out of the major 50 energy projects in Nigeria, we do not have access to data from these sources. And then we have to get data from secondary source because we do not have access to them. There are power plants, there are projects that
let me start again.
There are projects that we do not have information of. And then by the time we get the news of this project, we have to do our own finding. We have to look for research data about these energy projects. And the government does not incentivize how this data is being obtained or being archived into one repository. So as I'm talking to you now, there is no verifiable energy data source in Nigeria. And then we have Ministry of Power, we have Ministry of Rural Electricity Authority, and then we have other sectors and government agencies that are responsible for, that are players in the energy sector, but they do not have a unified repository where energy information are archived. And that is even visible on some of the data I'm presenting. I have to deal with a lot of missing data, a lot of information that I have to fill in and then make extrapolation, whereby if I continue to do that, my policy variables are subject to errors, and analysis are also subject to be erroneous in the long run if I am not very careful. And we claim to have institutions that are so vast in using artificial intelligence and other resources in solving energy problems. Now, where we have issue is there is a requirement for artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithm to be effective in producing results. When you do not achieve that data threshold, results you are going to get subsequently will be prone to error, and it doesn't come out well to solve your problem. So in most cases, it complicates, and you do not have to, you will not get good results in using them. So I was in a conference 2 months ago where somebody from Meta, Facebook Meta, made claim that the Llama 2 algorithm was used for analysis by a rural electrification agency. And I tried to verify those claims by checking through data and what they have said was achieved. And it wasn't tenable anywhere, but I stand corrected that the data we have now, we are sitting on right now, is not sufficient to scale any impact by artificial intelligence. So do we go to next slide, please? Do we go to next slide? Okay, I can still have some other issues I want to hint on. For example, the global energy pricing and how it affected energy pricing in Nigeria. For example, during the energy volatility and instability, there were a lot of countries that sought to stabilize their energy consumption and demand. So it led to too many self-federating entities, kind of maintaining demand and becoming sustainable. And then it affected the flow of transaction across economies where the demand and supply flattened out. And then too many independent entities like that induces what we call autarky, where there will be no comparative trade advantage in the long run. And as such, it happened in such a way that some of the countries in the Caribbean and in Europe and Middle East were able to regulate energy in such cases. And then the effect is still very much stronger in Nigeria and the entire West Africa as we are talking, because the federation and then the reliability becoming, those countries becoming reliable in energy led to distortion in global pricing. Then we talk about comparative trade advantage in energy pricing, where countries are able to form alliance or allies, and then they can negotiate how much they will place on what is going out of the country. So the Association of all oil exporting countries in the Caribbean, also known as the Petro-Carib, now form an alliance, about 12 of them now, and then they were able to front something in a long-term duration contract. So in the long run now, policy mechanism with global energy crisis. So if you compare that to what is happening in West Africa, we do not enjoy that kind of external stability. And so despite the boom and then the growth in energy and demand for fossil energy, it does not translate to any sustainable economic development because we do not have any clear policy drafts or policy review that could help do that. So these are the gaps that we have seen, and then for us to move forward in further research, we see that there need to be a lot of evidence-informed policy strategies that will be executed in the long run. So one of such approach that we have seen is ensuring that there is data robustness across all sectors, where we contribute to an open data exchange platform for energy agencies across the country and ensure that they are capable of exchanging data, they are capable of using the data, and then we could see the impact that they have been able to make in the short run. And then we also are able to estimate something from the informed policies, and where there could be simulations, policy simulations. And in my brief research, where I have to interpret some mathematical model for economists, where I was able to see something that if baseline studies are conducted properly and policies are enacted in a timely manner, it will be possible to see that after policy effects and before policy effects could be seen as line as a clear graph, where in some cases there could be intersection, in some cases there could be a kind of relationship that will inform how stakeholders will harness data and then will make positive contribution to energy regime in either renewable energy or in any alternative energy that is available. Now, it's possible to see how this model can contribute to stability and then reducing policy risk and then increasing foreign direct investments in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole. Now, it might strike you to note that when we look at Africa debt burden in comparison to the entire globe, most of the oil exporting countries, crude oil exporting countries, are owing highest. For example, the highest owing country right now is Angola, owing Asia countries about $56 to $68 billion. And that is not likely to change in the next few 10 years. And then on that table also, there is Nigeria, then there are other countries that are supposed to be stabilizing internal quality of energy of Africa as regarding energy. And if we do not step in to drive policy reform with data, with evidences, with body of evidences, you could see that this trend will continue year on year for the next 10 to 15 years. And the global debt burden is about to change trajectory in such a way that countries that are willing to alter contracts in viable debt and in default swap are no longer willing to do such. For example, where you see countries paying heavily from their GDP, and then they are subjected to other kind of crisis. We have Kenya as one of the countries that is a victim of foreign debt. Even if it is not energy related, any debt incurred can have similar impacts. And as such, it's imminent on everybody in this section to think of how we can come up with evidence-informed policy, data-driven evidence-informed policy in energy reform across Africa and not just Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Peters, for
Thank you.
such
So
insightful.
yes, I'll strictly adhere to the time And then say the remaining 10 minutes for question and answer, where I would like to take few questions about the insight I've gotten from seeing simulation in energy pricing and energy policies in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Peters, for such insightful presentation. Just a few key takeaways from the presentation is that despite the various energy policies being implemented in Nigeria, the gaps and challenges still remain high. There's also the challenge of data collection and integration, as you have noted in the presentation, where a lot of data is lacking and acquisition is a challenge, which merges with the archiving of such data to be used in other institutions and organizations. As you have noted that AI and machine learning is a great topic which can be integrated in this to address the challenge of data acquisition. Also the development of evidence-informed policy strategies, which can help in building consensus and leveraging on these all challenges. Thank you so much, Mr. Peters. I now welcome the floor to all the participants for your questions and comments. Feel free to type in the chat box or raise your hand. Questions and comments from Mr. Peters' presentation. I would like to welcome Ms. Emily Bolo for her comments and questions. As she prepares for her comments, I'm skimming through the chat box and I've not seen any question. Kindly feel free, unmute and give a comment or question. Lavender, kindly give us your comments.
Hi, Nancy. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can, Lavender.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity. Thank you, Peter, for bringing the aspect of subsidy in energy sector that is really a critical challenge, especially in the market today, looking at the gap between the demand and supply. What didn't come out clear that maybe I didn't get, or maybe you can just elaborate more, maybe you talked about it and it kind of slipped off, is the aspect of, let me put it in a very direct manner. Subsidy, as we all know, is that money that the government pays to reduce the market price of the energy that we have, and to make the consumer and to acquire this energy to access, not actually acquire, to access energy in a lower price than whatever is supposed to be there. And we're seeing that the government today is really, most government, you've mentioned Kenya here, we're really lagging behind and we are in debt, especially looking at our GDP and the finance, what, I don't know, you call that, but we're really in debt, paying a lot of bonds that we borrowed from the Euro, the IMF, the World Bank, and sort of. Can we think of the aspect of having these subsidies? I'm just thinking, but I stand to be corrected. The government is trying to project a lot of cash or a lot of money to the non-renewable, the fossil fuels, leaving behind the renewable, which is the solar, the clean energy sector. And most people, we are moving to the clean sector. Can that bring the aspect of this gap, and can it also result to the issue of debts that we're having today? Because when we're supplying something and no one is looking into it, or no one is investing in it, I think it's kind of a problem. What do you think?
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, I think subsidy is a kind of public induced discount by the government to cushion the supply, to cushion the cost of of energy distribution. Now, it is.
Hello, Mr. Peters.
Can you hear me?
We cannot hear you clearly.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, the network is playing with me. So now subsidy has lingered for quite some time now, and there has to be subsidy policy. You have to look at it like people have suppliers, energy suppliers have been benefiting from a subsidy regime year in, year out. And then if you look at it, can government continue to invest in such? And then there are other more efficacious alternative like free market access. How you study how free is the market? Because what we have that what the problem majorly is over-regulation, overly regulated markets where some players are given free hand to do what they like in the market, and others are constrained and they cannot play in the market. So when we look at this situation now, you have to look at a possible solution in creating more free markets. That is what we should be calling for. And then it's not subsidy sometimes that solves the problem. Then you have to look at how much of the subsidy can we remove per time that will not distort the market. So you look at it and then you look at how many players you can have in the market and what degree of freedom can you induce in the market to make the energy market sustainable. So I'm looking at a free market as a better solution and not tinkering with subsidy itself, because as it is in the presentation, you see that China, America, and then 10 or 5 other big countries are heavy on subsidy. And up on this country, they are still very much in the business of subsidy. So, but when you look at those numbers, where they are encouraging is there are the energy sector there is quite taxable and free. The market, the energy market there is free. And that is why a Nigerian can live here and go to America today and start a drilling company and then achieve a lot from there. And that is why you can see a Nigerian going to Russia to shipping crude oil or to shipping a refined oil, because the market there is free. So subsidy has a kind of a quick return on the market. And then when you look at the economic structure there, their policy mechanism is kind of more robust than what we have. For example, the Energy Administration or Energy Agency, Department of Energy in America, hold periodic review on what subsidy should be like. And when it's not achievable, the government shut down. They don't pay it. It's not something that they mandate people to pay it. And then because the market is very free, there are no regulated entities that allow formation of monopoly and cartels, which allow free flow of goods and services. But when you have subsidy and the market is not free, there's tendency for formation of monopoly and cartels, which will not allow the market to go as planned, and which will allow seasonal alteration of prices or volatility. And that is what most African countries are suffering. Not even the impact of subsidy itself, but impact of not having a free market where all potential players can play in. And that is why we are advocating for evidence-informed policy, so that we can see what a free market can achieve and what a policy review can give us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Nancy. Maybe I can just add something.
Sure, Lavender.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I now get your point. I really get the point of the aspect of having a free market. And we can say, looking at the energy sector today, for us to have a free market, the aspect of monopoly has to be dealt with. And this calls for privatization, most private sector being involved in the energy market, leaving alone like having the government to dominate and to help, or rather to fund the necessary or the the various institutions that they really want to work with. You've mentioned those countries that are doing well in terms of subsidies, and what comes out clear is the aspect that most of them are investing in the non-renewable energy, the fossil fuel. So maybe that's something that even most African countries can look into. The fact that we're not having those potentials anymore. Or okay, we do have them, but they're not well invested in, because most people are just for the transitioning and everything, and that leaves behind the aspect of the fossil fuels. So okay, I get your point, and yeah, back to you. Also to add that private sector participation is needed to be part of this policy documentation. We look at how they can be involved and how they can participate, so that we bring that effective competitiveness in the market and do away with the monopolistic aspect in any energy sector. Okay, back to you, Nancy.
Okay, Lavender. Thank you for all that. Moving to the next question. I can see a question in the chat box by Governor Fianyu. Could you kindly unmute and go ahead, Governor? Oh, okay, let me read it out for Peters. In terms of debt management, what paradigm can be developed to mitigate incurring huge debt in the energy sector?
Okay, from the narrative thus far, global narrative thus far, there used to be a kind of a procedure where a government will shut down if they exceed the threshold, the debt to GDP threshold. There's something in US called government shutdown. So there has to be a creative benchmarking of GDP to debt ratio in the long run. So when you have policy benchmark that you should not exceed social value a certain particular level of debt, then that will ensure that you stick to that. Then you can go a step forward by making it a law. So regardless of who is the president or who is the governor, that law becomes a force to reckon with, where nobody can go beyond certain threshold of income to debt ratio. And then number two, you have to look at some various policies of the government where the debt markets are open up to foreign investments in FDI. So some time ago, default swap, credit default swap is a technique that is used to transfer debt. But regardless of how effective it is never not to have any debt than to have a debt that you want to sell at a lower rate. So you can engage instruments like credit default swap in the open market, in the international market. And there are other ways that you cut down expenses too. The government can mandate reducing public expenditure. For example, why you see that the subsidy of public discount that are being given does not match up to the externalities that could be enjoyed by the public, you could reduce the subsidy. You might not necessarily take everything, but slashing it by a certain fraction can reduce debt also. So there are other debt management techniques, but I see that debt and a congressional budget office in America, what they did then when Obama was the president, there was this very young economist called Peter Osgars, who was the chief director of a congressional budget office then. So we say that when it is safe competition between public and private capital, costs will eventually come down, and eventually there will be enough liquidity to pay debts. So you look at how you can make the market freer. A more free market implies lesser debt for government to pay, because they will not use their fund to set up markets or in ensuring that regulation exists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Peters, for that response. That is very full of wealth and I think adopting that debt management strategies in countries can play a very great role in minimizing these gaps. Moving to the next question, I see a question from Dr. Akinyi. Dr. Akinyi, can you kindly unmute and go on? Okay, let me read it out. Has Nigeria made any efforts to mainstream climate change into its energy policy framework?
Okay.
Peter, just to give some background, sorry about that. Just to give some background to what I'm asking, and I'll give the example of DRC. DRC plans, in terms of it has made some considerable efforts in mainstreaming climate change into its energy policies. And at the moment, it plans to increase its renewable energy capacity in from at least in relation to it as far as its NDCs are concerned. That was it was planning to increase its renewable energy capacity from 2.9, I think, megawatts to 42.7 megawatts by 2030. And it was planning to do this through the promotion of solar, wind, and hydroelectric energy use. And it also has been involved in some of these global initiatives. We'll talk about the RED Plus, and all these plans have actually tried to, in as much as it is not really at the top there, but it's making significant progress as far as renewable energy access is concerned. So within this context, is Nigeria making any progress in terms of, because I also note that you mentioned that policy is one of the significant risks in Nigeria. So is it a lack of policy, effective policy? Is it implementation? Is it a problem of implementation? Basically, what actually is Nigeria planning in terms of mainstreaming such in its energy policies? Do you need more policies? Do you need proper implementation?
We need, okay, let me take it from the policy side. As we are talking right now, there are about 20 to 130 renewable energy policies across government agencies in the country. And then Nigeria has no problem making policies. As we are talking, in 1 hour, they have gotten about 30 to 40 policies, but they have problem with implementation and following through. Implementation is a key problem. And that is where I mentioned policy risk as a greatest in economic model and in the renewable energy sector. We do not have that consistency in committing to renewable energy projects. Then back in year 2013, there has been something called National Adaptation Projects, where there will be integration of climate change into the main energy sector. And then there will be integration of renewable energy and solar energy into supplementing available energy sources. But that has stalled because there was no clear benchmarking, policy benchmarking by the government. Then number two, there is no commitment, there is no financial commitment to these policies. When policies are enacted, there has to be financial implication and then the long-term commitments. When there are no funds committed to actualizing these policies, what we have will be just papers and words given to people and promises given to people. And then there have been a positive side of what has happened in the retarding implementation aspects, where universities, about 9 to 10 universities are giving licenses to generate energy about 100 to 120 megawatts. By the way, in Nigeria, if you are an entity that is generating above 20 megawatts of energy, you need a license from National Electricity Regulation Agency to verify you that to give you that license that you are generating sizable amount of energy. And then universities were given license to experiment to see how sustainable and reliable they can be in their energy generation. And then from that experimental approach, some things, some information, some data, some policy could be informed upon, and then data could be fleshed out that could be used nationwide in enforcing some of the policies that are loosely implemented. Then number 3, we have post-impact assessment, where we do not kind of see effectiveness of, we do not measure effectiveness of policies. What organizations do, mostly non-profits, in monitoring and evaluation, something like that, is what Nigeria does not really have in place yet. And then when we look at the resources that are available for this part of how to meter effectiveness of policies, we see that most of those instruments are not up to standard, and then they do not generate enough evidence to inform of subsequent policies. And that is where we have issues. No data is coming out, and then no information is coming out. So as I'm talking to you right now, these universities that have gotten license to generate electricities, we do not have data on where they are at the project stage where they are. And supposing they are generating electricity, I don't know how the government will measure what electricity, the quantity of electricity they are generating, the consumption, and the daily data, or if possible, weekly data of these energy sources, and what the possibilities that they can achieve within a short time frame. So these are the problems that we have. And then in relation to climate change, Nigeria itself is having an issue as where to stand in the issue of climate change. Because when you're talking about climate change, now we have mitigation, adaptation, and recovery. Now, the efforts are thinly spread across the 3 spheres of climate change, climate change fighting. And then we do not know the aspects that the government is really facing, because anywhere the fund that say they are pouring money into, the government will easily accept that, yes, we have something going on there, give us the money, but it's not tenable. We see that mitigation efforts are quite expensive, and they kind of get clumsy and messier to achieve in the long run. So switching to adaptation could be cheaper and easier. And then we see that the strategies the government is taking from there are not open. We cannot meter them in the long run. We just see what their intentions are. We cannot see the action as at where they are standing at the point. So these are the little issues we are having for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters, for that insightful response. I hope, Dr. Akinyi, your question has been addressed. Okay, thank you, Mr. Peters. As that response has touched on some of the points that were made on energy volatility and instability, which leads to lack of sustainability in the efforts which had been started in the country. Thank you. I now welcome Benjamin for his question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peters, but I feel like you've already answered the question that I had, which was when you talk of energy sector. There are things that we cannot separate from that docket. That is politicians or policymakers and businessmen. This cuts across because politicians, they implement the policies as they make the policies. And businessmen, on the other hand, like we call them maybe the cartels. But considering that in Africa, it is still the same politicians whom we expect to pass the policies that are favorable or that are going to enhance the renewable energy, they are the ones who are involved in the business, in the energy business. So in the long run, they end up passing policies that favor them and their businesses and not the energy sector itself. So my question was, is there a political goodwill to ensure that this does not happen? Because you realize that, for instance, in Kenya, in the constitution is very clear, where we have laws that state that about conflict of interest. But then it is the same politicians who end up using their power to do businesses to boost themselves economically. Now, how is it in Nigeria? That was my question, but I feel like you've already answered it. But if at all you have any input, thank you.
Okay, I would like to contribute a little. Yes, the narrative is almost the same across Africa as across continental Africa, but there's still something I so much believe in, the power of free market. That is the only force that can separate business class from the political class. As it is in America, as it is in United Kingdom and in Europe and in Australia, that is also possible in Africa too. So by the time they can be pressured into creating free market access, a free market economy through capitalism, the competition will be so much that when you are not efficient, politics alone cannot save you. And then it's a separating force that it can separate politicians from businessmen in a very clear term. But also see a situation where a kind of moral obligation in the sense that when that conflict of interest is bound to arise, there should be clear demarcation. People with vested interest should not be allowed to assume offices where they have no, where their conflict of interest will manifest in the long run. And as a country, I can boldly say that we have not dealt with that issue yet, but I have hope that the future generation is beating a clear path to arrive at that, where business and politics will be clearly separated by free market forces. Then number two, if conflict of interest arises, it is up to the people too to say, no, we cannot accept this. We do not want this. We do not want that. But when you do not object, when you do not say anything, you are being offered as a collateral damage to what is happening in the economy. And that is why we are happy for what happened in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. I welcome a comment from Mr. Charles Tonui. As Charles prepares, is there any question from the audience before I close the floor for questions and comments? Please feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat. If there are no questions or comments, I would like to invite Florence for the final comments on this presentation before ushering in Dr. Akinyi for some announcements. Welcome, Florence. Florence, are you there?
She has dropped off, Nancy.
Okay, sorry. I think she's having some internet challenges. I would like to invite Dr. Akinyi for the final comments and to give some announcements. Welcome, Dr. Akinyi.
Thank you very much once again, Peters, for that very insightful presentation. Indeed, we've learned a lot, and a lot has been said, and questions asked and answers given. And for now, I just want to make a few remarks. I really just want to get back to echo what you've said, because Nancy has already done that. So mine for now is just to offer closing remarks, and to thank everyone for taking their time to spend this afternoon with us to understand or get to hear what it was had for us. In terms of announcements, there is some mini grants. We made a call, Irene made a call for the LIPS, evidence-informed policy mini grants, for call people to make applications for them. The deadline is on Monday. We have received a number of requests to kind of postpone, to extend the deadline rather. So we are considering that, and may have to maybe push it to Friday, because the deadline was on Monday 10th. So we may be pushing that to Friday of the same week. So that is on 19th. So kindly make your final preparations, whatever it is that you need to do, to ensure that you make substantive and effective application for that. Another announcement that we will be launching our mini grants. We have a number of mini grants, actually, and a lot of mini grants. So we will be launching these mini grants on Friday next week. We have a number of speakers who've confirmed their attendance, and we have many people who also registered to attend. So we're hoping that you continue to register, those who haven't registered, to continue doing so that you be part of this very, very important day for both Irene and our stakeholders. So we hope that you all will be able to attend this day. We look forward to hosting all of you on that day, and further engagement. And finally, and I think this will be done bilaterally through email. So finally, I just want to thank all of you again for creating the time to be with us today. I'm not sure if Nancy, you want to take a photo of everyone so that we call it a day, and I wish you all a blessed weekend ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Akinyi. Yes, I would like to take a photo. I welcome everyone to switch on their cameras and smile for the group photo, as Lavender will be taking the photo. Kindly tell us when you're ready, Lavender. Lavender, are you done taking the photo?
Not yet. I'm having some technical challenges. I don't know if you can just help from your side.
Okay, sure. Kindly let us turn on our cameras. Karin, Kagere, Lena, kindly. Let's all smile for the photo. Okay, thank you everyone for your presence and participation in this review. See you soon and goodbye.